Hi, welcome to Misaligned Learning. I'm Jackie, and today we're going to talk about normals polygon mesh. So here we have a basic low-resolution polygon cylinder. And let's first talk about the face normals of this mesh. So what are face normals? Face normals are just telling Maya the direction of each of the faces so it knows how to respond when there are textures or lighting interacting with this object. So let me select this object and let's actually turn on the visibility of our face normals. So to do that, we go under Display and Polygons, and I'm just going to pop this out for convenience here. And let's turn on our face normals. Now what you'll see is we get a line that's coming out from each of our faces in a perpendicular direction of that face. So here at the end, they're coming out this way. And then as they're going around, they're angling outward. So let's actually see what this looks like when we turn on a rendering mode. So let me go, I'm opening up my Arnold renderer viewport over here so we can see what happens. Now I have a basic texture applied so that we can see the front and the back, and then also light hitting it. So this is reacting as we would expect. The outside is facing outward with its textures and light. But what would happen if we flipped this? So I'm going to go under my mesh display and pop this out so we can toggle these more easily. And I'm going to just reverse my normals here. Now by reversing the normals, what this is doing is it's saying that the inside is actually where the light will hit and where the textures will sit and face forward. Now, I've set up the UVs to be facing outwards, so I've essentially flipped my UVs inside out. But we can see over here that now the inside is what's showing our textures. The outside is not even visible to us thanks to backface culling. It's worth noting that I've overridden something a bit important here in Maya. Maya, by default, if I go into my shape node here of my object, by default, this is turned on by Maya, this double-sided in its render stats. And what that's saying is that even if we're looking at the backside, Maya will render it. So we want to make sure that we're working with our normals facing the correct and expected direction in case it's not Maya that is doing the rendering, or that we're not retaining these settings if we were to export this mesh and render elsewhere. Let me flip these normals back. And now let's talk about our vert normals. Okay, so when we look at this object, we're seeing how it's reacting to light when it's got our smooth shading visibility here in our viewport. When the light hits this, it's coming off in this direction on this face, and then this direction when it hits this face. And because of this dramatic jump, we're seeing a harsh line that's creating this faceted look. It's breaking these into separate planes. Now let's just say that we want this to appear smooth without adding any extra divisions. So we don't want to increase the resolution of our mesh, but we want this to feel more like a can shape with the light bending around it. We can do that with our normals. Instead of turning on our face normals, let's turn on our vertex normals. And now what you'll see is that at each vert, we have 3 normals, and that's representing all the different planes coming off. If we go into our vertex face mode, you'll see it's actually 4. That what it's doing is it's talking about the normals as it goes from one edge to the other and how the light will react there. So if we're just looking at this barrel shape around, we can see here again that the light is coming off here and then it comes off this way over here. If we want them to have the same, we need to soften those edges. So soften the harsh look of it. So I'm going to grab all these edges that go around this can cylinder, and I'm going to soften those. So I'm back in my mesh display, and I'm going to soften these edges. And now what you'll see is that instead of a harsh line here, I'm getting a gradient fall off, and it's creating the illusion of the light bending over this object. And what's happening is that our normals are now shared here. So Maya has averaged out this normal's direction, at least when we're talking about going here to here. Our normals were not affected on these other edges, so we've only adjusted these. So if we look at our view here, we can now see this angle is different. So now as the light hits this object, it's bending, and it averages out in this fanned radial way so that it's creating this illusion of sweeping the light over these edges, this surface. Now, if we wanted to do the same thing going around this other direction, we could. So we could take all of these edges and let's soften those. So I'm going to soften those edges. And now Maya's trying to do the same thing. It's trying to say that the light is sweeping over in this direction, which is giving us this gradient fall off over here. Now we could take this even further, and we can actually manually manipulate these normals as well. So I'm going to go into my vertex face component mode, and this is going to explode out my object. And now I can see all of the normals, and you'll see that they're all shared whenever we hit a vert. So because we've smoothed out, softened all of these edges, it's made these vertex averages the same. But let's say that we want to manually modify something. I can now select these individual vertex normals, but I can edit them if I go in my mesh display here and I go to vertex normal edit tool. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to rotate these normals. So if I wanted to, let's say bring these back here, I could do that. And now what that's telling Maya is that the light is coming this way, and then as soon as it makes this turn, it's now going this way. And we no longer have that shared gradient going across. Whenever we make our normal vert directions yellow, this is also showing us that this is now locked. So when we manually override something, we're now locking that direction. Let's look at what we did here. And by manually adjusting, we now changed how the light is sweeping across this object and giving us different gradient fall-offs. Now, if we were to unlock these normals, so I have the object selected and I hit unlock, that's going to bring us back to our previous setting, and now Maya's taking the wheel and it's going to override all of those changes. So it not only will unlock, it will set it back to its main tool setting that we used before. So we can change this whole object and say the entire object, I'd like to harden all the edges. That's going to give me that faceting. I could say I want to soften all edges, and that's going to give this smooth effect where the light is going to try to sweep over. Or I could also hit soften harden, and this is going to be Maya making its best guess at what can transition the best and what should be hard or soft. And you can see that Maya believes that this whole thing should be hard, but we can again override, select specific edges, and then I can soften those. So now I have more of a can-like shape that's wrapping around with my sharpness at the caps. Now, how does this affect render? If we were rendering out our scene just as it is, then this would absolutely affect how our object is rendered and how it reacts to the light. However, if we are going to go through any smoothing for this object, then let me add that and show you what happens. Then now all of the verts of its new object are going to have these smooth edges. So it doesn't actually matter what we had prior to smoothing. Smoothing is going to override and adjust all of these normals. I hope that cleared things up. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these demos, please subscribe to my channel.